We measure peace from a high altitude, watching jagged, violent borders stabilize into neutral lines. But pulling back into a sterile statistical grid creates a flawed assumption. We act as though the moment a deal is broadcast, the conflict's tension evaporates for everyone involved. Those broadcast waves declaring victory travel across continents in seconds, creating an illusion of immediate closure. But that sterile broadcast fails to penetrate the messy, agonizing reality of the people actually living through the aftermath. Geopolitical peace is a statistical illusion. A signed treaty does not end a war. It merely starts the clock on the most agonizing wait for the families left behind, isolated in the dark until physical survival can be verified. Step off the global map into a cramped Berlin flat at 3 a.m. Elias is physically consumed by the tension of a relentless storm. Here, the scale of peace shrinks to the size of a single room. The toll of this weight is entirely visceral. Elias chews the stem of his wire-rimmed glasses, tasting yesterday's coffee and the sharp, metallic edge of prolonged anxiety that settles on the back of the tongue. The stakes are bound to blood. His brother was out there when the shells fell, lost in the chaotic dust of the conflict zone. Elias flew home with nothing but a duffel bag, a twisted promise, and absolute silence. Within these walls, macro-level resolutions mean nothing. A signature in a distant capital holds zero weight. For Elias, peace does not exist until flesh crosses his threshold to prove the war did not claim his brother. This diagram illustrates ambiguous loss, where grief lacks physical verification. The mind is trapped between presence and absence, two realities violently vibrating but refusing to resolve. To maintain sanity, the brain displaces massive trauma and snaps directly onto hyperspecific, mundane details in the environment. A mismatched red wool sock left drying on a shelf suddenly commands attention. An irrelevant item left by a forgotten visitor transforms into a burning monument in Elias's mind. The low whistle of a kettle boiling water fills the physical vacuum of the apartment. The steam carries the sensory ghosts of past routines, mimicking late nights fixing engines in a father's garage. We weigh the massive, abstract machinery of global war against the extreme fragility of ordinary items. The objects in the apartment are forced to absorb the heavy, psychological overflow of his uncertainty. In the agonizing gap between a signed treaty and a survivor's return, sterile summit rooms fade. The ordinary ruins of a home become the actual front line of the psychological conflict. There is an impossible distance between the mechanical decisions made by politicians in quiet rooms and the chaotic dust where those decisions carve human flesh. Elias builds a mental shield against that violence using a global tapestry of memories. He anchors himself with the echo of a childhood market vendor, a mother's stitched fabric pattern, and warmth spoken in the dark. He focuses on the absurdity of a plastic kawaii charm his niece sent from afar, catching a tiny spark of light. It is a tender, ridiculous piece of luck, held against the heavy dread of the hour. The psychological warfare manifests. Elias feels the phantom itch of a white scar across his eyelid, a childhood injury from a rusty swing. He paces the narrow hall, bare feet slapping relentlessly against the cold tile. Bargaining with these multilingual memories and enduring these physical tics are necessary survival mechanics. They are desperate attempts to prevent his brother's absence from permanently solidifying into his daily life. In the quiet of a 3 a.m. apartment, the physical tension finally peaks in Elias's chest. He presses down on the scarred oak table, and the weight fractures into sudden, heavy clarity. True peace is not the absence of war. It is not the silencing of artillery, nor is it the signing of a political document. Peace is a strictly micro-level reality. It is the very first morning an individual wakes up without having to check if the person they love still breathes in the next room. The psychological scars of conflict deeply outlast the political boundaries of the war itself. Every empty chair in a survivor's home operates as a newly quiet battlefield. Elias steps out onto the cool, damp balcony. The rain begins to ease, carrying the scent of wet concrete. The atmosphere shifts, transitioning the night from active, suffocating panic into the dull ache of chronic waiting. A lone iridescent feather catches his eye, pinned to the railing by a drop of water. It trembles violently in the wind, but it holds. It is a perfect, unexpected image of endurance caught in the aftermath of macro-level decisions. The tension for the families remains deliberately unresolved. The world continues to bend around massive, unseen political forces, but human survival stays deeply personal and entirely precarious. The stakes shrink to a simple binary. Either the brother arrives tomorrow to break the silence, or the absence settles permanently into grief. Society measures the end of conflicts through summits and borders, but we require a different metric. Geopolitical deals may wash the map clean, but for those waiting for a knock at the door, the personal fight for survival continues in the dark.